Chapter 3. My great-grandfather came from Italy. Dominic heard the words come tumbling out of his mouth. He took a gulp of air, anxious to see if anyone would object. No one did. With a wave of relief he had remembered at the last minute how one of his foster fathers thought that the name Cantori was Italian, but without knowing his family history he couldn't be sure. Dominic cringed now as he caught sight of Mr. Howard's wary look. There was something in the way his left eyebrow rose into a crooked arch over his eye. Dominic filled with embarrassment as he remembered that his teacher had talked to his caseworker. Of course Mr. Howard knew the truth about him. He knew that Dominic didn't know a thing about his family. Dominic swung around to look back at the ranger as she continued her talk. To celebrate the many immigrants who risked so much to come to our country, we have established a special memorial, she announced. It's called the American Immigrant Wall of Honor. Families and friends of immigrants may have a name placed on the wall for a donation. Do any of you know if you have relatives' names on the wall? Dominic watched uneasily as a number of hands went up, including Justin's and his friends. Dominic threw up his hand. He wanted so much to be like them, to have a family name up on that wall. Mr. Howard's eyebrow arched even higher, and the ranger beamed with delight. "That's terrific," she cooed, "because we'll all be going to see the wall after lunch. Then we can look for those names together. If everyone will follow me," the ranger continued, "we'll move on to the baggage room area." Dominic straggled behind the group as they walked to the center of the room. Dominic could no longer hear what the ranger was saying. He was too distracted as he stared at the back of Mr. Howard's head. He worried about going to the wall and about how embarrassed he'd be when his classmates discover that his family name wasn't there. "Why did I have to tell such a big dumb lie?" Dominic thought. If only it would all go away. Dominic couldn't stop worrying as the group slowly made its way around the museum's first floor, and he hardly noticed large black and white photographs of immigrants that hung on the walls. The sights and sounds of the second floor were lost on him as well. He was unable to concentrate on anything. Even so, the tour went on. The telephone receivers you see in the display in front of you are equipped with taped voices of real immigrants telling their stories, the ranger explained. Dominic thought of his own story and how he would give anything to change it. He followed the others and mechanically picked up a receiver and listened. The voice of an old Polish woman croaked in his ear. She talked about how dangerous escaping from her country had been. As she told of the rough, stormy seas and the bad food on the ship, Dominic thought about the ferry ride home. He imagined the jeers and ridicule that would be heaped up on him and how his favorite part of the trip, the boat ride past the Statue of Liberty, would be ruined. All the fifth graders would know the truth about his family and that he was a liar. "All right, folks, we're going up to the third floor," Mr. Howard called. "Line up at the escalator and watch your step." Dominic hung up the receiver and watched the excited huddle of fifth graders rush to get in line. He imagined himself standing conspicuously alone. Then the moment Dominic had been dreading would finally arrive. Mr. Howard would announce that it was time to see the wall, the dreaded wall. As Dominic followed his class to the line by the escalator, he ducked behind one of the display cases and re-emerged in the middle of a group of Japanese tourists who were waiting at the down escalator. He moved along, hidden in the large crowd, and kept his head low as he rode back to the first floor. Once there, Dominic broke away from the crowd and ran to the end of the hall. He saw an open door and stepped inside. He smiled at the sight of all the brooms, mops, and bottles of cleaners that filled the little closet. Then he reached for a big flashlight that was sitting on a shelf, clicked it on, and closed the door behind him. In the glow of the flashlight, Dominic cleared a space in the back corner of a closet, behind some big canvas tarps that were hanging from hooks. When he was sure that he was safely hidden away, Dominic sank down to the floor and took off his sneakers and socks. He turned the flashlight off and wiggled his toes with relief. He welcomed the dark, like a cool, protective black blanket. Now that he was hidden away from all of them, he could relax. With a yawn, he laid his head back against the wall and began to wonder what he should do next, but he was too tired to think. All he knew was that he needed to get away. Dominic yawned again. The strain of the day's excitement was suddenly catching up with him. He found himself struggling to keep his eyes open, but the temptation to give in to the drowsy feeling of sleep was too much for him. Dominic's head drooped onto his chest as his eyes closed. I'll just take a little rest, he thought, just for a few minutes. Then he thought nothing at all.